Okay, let's unpack this. We're diving into the news that broke today. The incredibly sad passing of a true musical giant, Brian Wilson, at age 82 on June 11th.
Yeah, it's heavy news. And to guide us through this moment, we've pulled together, well, a stack of sources. We've got the initial news reports, a really insightful column reflecting on his art.
It's just profound and complex, right?
Exactly. And crucially, moving tributes from the people who knew him best.
So our mission for this deep dive really is to go through these sources together. We want to understand the immediate waves of reaction and maybe even more importantly, extract what the people closest to him and the writers who really got his work, what they saw as the absolute core, the most essential parts of his incredible, often complex legacy.
What do these specific sources tell us about the impact of his music and the man who created it?
That's it. Okay, so where do we start? The basic news.
Yeah, let's start there. The initial news from the sources confirms Brian Wilson's family announced his death on Wednesday, June 11, 2025. He was 82.
And the family statement.
It conveyed how truly heartbroken they were. They said they felt at a loss for words right now and were sharing our grief with the world. Love and mercy.
Love and mercy. Yeah.
It's worth noting, though, the sources we're looking at, they don't actually specify cause of death or where he passed away, just the fact and the date.
Okay. And then the tribute started almost immediately, didn't they?
Instantly, just waves of them, reflecting the sheer scale of his impact. The official Beach Boys account, for instance, shared a message calling him a genius and the soul of our sound.
The soul of their sound. That's powerful.
It is. They stated his melodies changed the course of music forever and created the soundtrack of so many lives.
And their tribute really focused on that feeling he created, right?
Absolutely. It highlights how he gave the world the American dream of optimism, joy, and a sense of freedom through music that was just designed to make people feel good, make them believe in summer and endless possibilities.
Simple but profound.
Yeah.
And Mike Love shared that post too, the source notes.
He did. And you see how personal those connections were, even within the band itself. Al Jardine's perspective is, well, it's incredibly touching.
What did he say?
He described Brian not just as a bandmate, but my friend, my classmate, my football teammate, my Beach Boy bandmate, and my brother in spirit.
Wow. That covers a lot of ground.
It really does. And there's a comforting thought in his tribute, too. Sort of imagining Brian reunited with Carl and Dennis, singing those beautiful harmonies again.
Oh, that's lovely.
Yeah. Jardine called him a humble giant who made him laugh, and then added poignantly, "Still I have the warmth of the sun," referencing the song, of course.
Of course. And then there's John Stamos. He had a really close relationship with Brian later on, didn't he?
He did, and his tribute was really powerful. He said, "Brian didn't just soundtrack my life. He filled it with color, with wonder, with some of the most unforgettable, emotional, joyful moments."
It's more than just music.
Much more. Stamos actually pushed back against just calling him a genius. He described him as a gentle, soulful, funny, complex, beautiful man who heard things no one else could hear and felt things deeper than most of us ever will.
And he connected that inner world to the music's effect.
Directly. Stamos felt what was extraordinary was how Brian took all that internal stuff and turned it into music that wrapped itself around the world and made us all feel less alone.
Made us feel less alone. That resonates.
Yeah. And he specifically named songs, Pet Sounds, God Only Knows, Wouldn't It Be Nice, saying they didn't just play in the background.
No, they shaped things.
They shaped who we were. They shaped who I became. That's a direct quote. And Stamos closed with this truly resonant line, "Music is God's voice."
Heavy stuff.
Yeah.
And his daughter, Carney.
Carney Wilson, yeah, she shared her deep sadness too, just words straight from the heart. She said her father was every fiber of my body, talked about having a soul connection with him.
Oh, wow.
And shared this really personal image of him playing the piano for Grandma Audrey, his mom. Her closing words were just simple and raw. "I love you, Daddy. I miss so much you already."
Just heartbreaking.
It is. And it wasn't just the immediate family and band circle. Nancy Sinatra's tribute, for instance.
Right, she sang with him.
She recalled singing California Girls with him as one of the biggest thrills of my life. And she stated, "His cherished music will live forever as he travels through the universe and beyond."
So looking at all these initial reactions, these tributes compiled in the sources,
Yeah.
what's the takeaway?
Well, what seems clear is that the immediate impact wasn't just, like, acknowledging his musical genius in some abstract way.
No, it felt deeper.
It was deep, personal, often really emotional responses to music that felt like it was speaking directly to people's lives, shaping them, making them feel something profound.
Okay, so that's the immediate human reaction. But the sources also start digging into the music itself,
Yeah.
right? And that duality you mentioned.
Exactly. They immediately start dissecting the music, and yeah, they uncover this fascinating, sometimes challenging duality.
So starting with the early days, the surf hits.
Yeah, think about those. The sources really highlight the contrast between the seemingly simple, sunny surf hits, surfing USA, fun, fun, fun.
Pure California dream stuff.
Pretty much. According to the New York Times piece we looked at, these captured Southern California as a kind of paradise. Cheerful harmonies, that signature boogie beat, all focused on cars, sex, waves.
It sounded like pure, uncomplicated joy.
It did. But, even early on, as one column points out, there was maybe something deeper bubbling beneath the surface.
How so?
Well, that piece includes this really striking anecdote comparing Brian to the writer Borges.
Oh, the one who wrote about the sea before seeing it.
That's the one. The column suggests Wilson's music came not just from the real Southern California, but from the sea of his imagination, which it describes as vaster than the real one.
So he was writing about surf without actually surfing, creating a world from inside.
Exactly. That sense of creating a world from within, it seems like it was there from the start, according to that analysis.
Okay. And this internal world, it obviously became much more apparent later on.
Oh, definitely. In his later, more complex work, the sources describe his unique genius. One quote from a 2021 documentary I mentioned talks about him literally having an orchestra in his head.
An orchestra in his head.
Yeah. And the New York Times piece specifically highlights his, almost unparalleled ability to craft these crystalline vocal arrangements, complex harmonies, and intricate soundscapes. Stuff that was just way beyond simple pop music.
And the emotional depth wasn't just later either, was it? The sources mention early examples.
Right. The column points to In My Room as an early perfect example of what it calls teenage existentialism at its most refined.
Teenage existentialism, I like that.
Me too. And listen to how that source quotes the lyrics to make the point. In this world, I lock out all my worries and my fears, do my crying and my sighing. Now it's dark and I'm alone, but I won't be afraid.
Yeah, that's pretty deep.
Yeah.
Right there alongside the surfboards and woodies.
Exactly. A profound introspection, right in the middle of the sunnier sound.
And of course, this journey into deeper territory, emotionally and musically, it all culminates, according to the sources, with Pet Sounds.
Yeah, 1966, it's consistently described as the masterpiece, a pivotal turning point.
How do they describe it?
Words like wistful song cycle come up, blending the rock band format with classical instrumentation, incorporating musical oddities like the electro-theremin.
That eerie sound on Good Vibrations, yeah. Though that wasn't on Pet Sounds itself.
Right, good point. That came slightly after, but in that same innovative period. But God Only Knows is held up as a key track from Pet Sounds, described as a cosmic love pledge.
The Cosmic Love Pledge. Beautiful.
And one source specifically praises Carl Wilson's vocal on that. Just absolutely beautiful delivery.
So themes that were maybe hinted at earlier, they've become more explicit later.
Yeah, ideas of mortality, the unknowable meaning of life. They appear more clearly in later songs, like Till I Die.
What do the sources say about that one?
One writer says it asks us to imagine our mortality and describes the feeling it evokes as meaning being unknowable like the ocean. Really evocative stuff.
It is. Now, we have to address the other side of this too, the personal struggles the sources mention.
We do. To understand the full picture presented in these sources, yeah, it's necessary to acknowledge the personal struggles that were so intertwined with his creative output.
The damaged genius narrative.
One source, the NYT, does use that phrase, linking it factually to his well-documented battles with schizoaffective disorder and depression in Hearing Voices.
And there's the recent news mentioned too.
Yes, it's important we report what the sources state here. The NYT piece includes the factual detail that in early 2024, after his wife Melinda passed away.
His beloved wife.
Yeah, he was placed under conservatorship. The source states this was due to a diagnosis of a major neurocognitive disorder and dementia.
Okay, these are difficult facts presented in the reporting.
They are, and we're just relaying them as they appear in the sources we have.
But importantly, the sources also offer some balance to that narrative, right?
Mhm.
They talk about peace later in life.
Crucial balance, yeah. The AP source, for instance, notes that Wilson achieved some level of peace late in his life.
Okay.
That source mentions his happy marriage with Melinda, and also the joy he apparently found in seeing the band who worshipped him perform his music.
And there was that quote from Jason Fine.
Yes, also in the AP piece, it really kind of encapsulates the flip side of the coin. Fine said the simple message Brian ultimately wanted to give people through his music was a sense of warmth, a sense that it's going to be okay.
That's lovely.
Fine added that in the same way music had lifted Brian up from his own darkness, he tried to do the same for other people.
So the sources really paint this complex picture, don't they? Inner turmoil, yes, but also the source of incredible empathy and this desire to share comfort through the music.
Exactly. The darkness and the light existing together, and both fueling the art in different ways.
So, considering this really fascinating, sometimes contradictory life in this incredible body of work, how do the sources ultimately define his lasting impact?
Well, the scale is often described with almost legendary references. Bob Dylan's famous remark comes up a lot, cited in the NYT source.
Ah, the one about his ear.
That's the one. Dylan said, "That here. I mean, Jesus, he's got to will that to the Smithsonian."
It just speaks to that sheer, almost unbelievable technical gift he had.
Totally. But then there's the human dimension, too. That quote from Anthony DeCurtis in the AP source.
What did he say?
He said, "Millions of people had their lives changed by their music." And he added, not just enjoyed it, but had their lives transformed. That's quite an accomplishment.
Lives transformed, not just enjoyed. That's a key distinction.
It really is. So if you put those together, Dylan highlighting the unique, almost otherworldly talent, and DeCurtis emphasizing the profound human transformation, the sources collectively tell us that Brian Wilson's impact wasn't just technical innovation or, cultural history. It was personal alchemy, really, on a massive scale.
Turning complex inner feelings.
Exactly. Turning those complex inner feelings into sounds that fundamentally altered how countless listeners felt about their own lives and about the world around them.
So this deep dive, really guided by the sources we've looked at, it's taken us from that initial shock and sadness through the immediate heartfelt tributes, and then into this rich, sometimes challenging tapestry of his life and work.
Exploring the duality, yeah, the sound and the man.
And ultimately seeing that profound transformative impact he had as seen through the eyes of those who knew him and wrote about him.
Yeah, a complex legacy, but undeniably huge.
Definitely. So maybe a final thought for you, the listener, as you sit with this news and reflect on the music, something that emerges from these sources.
Consider this. How is it that Brian Wilson's songs so often manage to contain both things at once? That boundless, sun-drenched optimism of a perfect summer day. And at the same time, the quiet, introspective, sometimes melancholy depths of the ocean. How do they hold both?
Right. What is that unique combination, that duality that runs through so much of this discussion? What does it speak to about the core of the human experience?
Something to think about as you listen to those incredible sounds again.